Hello and welcome to the Confusion Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Kammer, and, well, what should we talk about this week? Well, I mean, really, I could joke that there's only really one thing we should be talking about, but even I'm not going to go ahead and talk about the roast of WrestleMania and the fallout from that. I'll let you guys do your own research and let it be known that, every podcast and their mother likes to talk about the big two, and we don't do that around these here parts terribly often. So instead, we're going to plug what's coming next, and that is sit down and talk with the Luminary, a Midwestern standout, former 0-1 USA Tag Team Champion, former TWE Tag Team Champion, had a shot at the full queer Tag Team Championships held by Irvin West and Andy Ripley of the Creeps, friend of the show, Irvin West. And before I drop the adverts and to go in the interview, I do want to pull back the curtain a wee bit on this, is that, again, this podcast, I consider this podcast a safe space for wrestlers of all types on here. And, anybody who knows who the Luminary is know that they are non-binary. And within the intro, I bugger that up and I misgender them. And I had the brief moment of panic, and it's no secret these most of the time these podcasts are in the can days into time, and at this moment of panic, do I redo it all? What do I in addition to the, oh dear God, I'm burning a bridge, already a bridge I had no intentions of burning, but I decided no, we're going to keep it in. So right away we're going to note that I misgender the Luminary, and I'm leaving it in basically as a lesson, as a reminder. My logic being, and you could feel free to disagree with me. That is fine. This is not objective truth. This is strictly the court of opinion. But I feel that with the way times are and the excuses people use for things, I feel like this is a good example of someone who is trying and falling down in the process. But instead of just coming up with excuses, you correct the mistake. You ask if you get your forgiveness, and you try to do better. And that's what that was. So for the world to hear, you will hear this mistake, but you will also hear me correct myself and then hopefully not make that mistake again. Because, we all, even us allies, aren't perfect, and things slip the tongue just because we're not in the habit. And so that is an example of that. And I not that I've ever promoted myself as infallible, but I definitely wanted this as an example of, sometimes things don't go right, and the best we can do is to, fix the problem, use the proper pronouns in this situation. No tantrums, no, well, this is stupid. No, we are just, whoops, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Bam. Problem solved. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of clear the air on that one, because I and other people, sometimes you can be critical on for things that can be edited because they're not live, and then you actively choose not to. And I just want to kind of throw out there that this was a creative choice, not just poor editing. So there's plenty of other poor editing to be had in this show that doesn't involve pronouns. So just wanted to throw that out there. But barring that, barring my glaring gaffe, wonderful interview, such a fascinating talk about the twists and turns of a young career. Trained with Cowboy Bob Orton. Have never talked to anyone that had trained with Bob Orton, and also trained with Skayde too. So crazy go nuts. Plus, of course, we have the cursory talk about representation in the realm of professional wrestling and in the arts. So I hope you enjoy it despite any of my gaps. It was a great talk for me to have with someone. And that being said, let's get to it. I'll get you the adverts. Get yourself a cup of coffee. Get yourself a coffee maker, if you will. We'll be back with the Luminary. Hey, folks, MLW Confusion's become a veritable hub of shopping and treats and all that sort of good stuff. Whether you need a sugar-free alternative to energy drinks in the form of Raise Energy, or maybe even, top of the line ice makers, coffee machines, and other household appliances, or, well, let's go crazy, and you can even get WWE licensed apparel all through my links section. All you got to do is wander down to the descriptor of this week's episode, check out the various links, click on them, and go shopping like you normally would. Heck, like, it's no difference. You just came in and just said Rob sent you. And that way, you can get the things you need, maybe even at a discount, and the podcast gets a kickback as well. So be sure to check out those links. Thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. And we are back, the Confusion Wrestling Podcast. I'm Rob Kammer, and with me in the studio today, I got a very special guest. He is the selfless leader of the light. Or excuse me, they are the selfless leader of the night. Sorry, nope. I knew that, and I slipped already. I am a terrible host.
It's all right. It's all right. But yes, it's me. I'm the Luminary. Hello, everybody.
We're off to a great start. It's a good thing we spent like 20 minutes like doing small talk, so I'm only half an idiot instead of a complete idiot. And but yeah, so blew it already. That being said, like assuming I don't continue to bury myself, it's been great having you on the show, and hopefully like I'll redeem myself here in a bit. Anyway, so thank you for coming on, and I like to start the party off with the ever original, never asked before question. What got you into professional wrestling?
So, it was a combination of things. For a long time, like I remember when I was growing up, my father was very big into professional wrestling, but like I would never really be super invested in it, at least at that time. I remember like seeing it on the screen a few times and being like, "Oh, that's interesting." But like what really got me invested was when I was in like sixth grade elementary school, and my cousin was like really, really into the WWE. And he brought me over to watch WrestleMania 29. And ever since then, I've been pretty like hooked.
Well, I'll just start there. So, what was so special about WrestleMania 29 that got you hooked to it?
At the time, I was really like invested in what they were doing with Punk and Taker. I thought that was really neat. Um, Back then, even I thought the like rematch between Rock and Cena was stupid, even like given the additional context. Uh, and like I don't know. Those were the two matches that I remember sticking out to me the most. I think that was also the show that had the six man with the shield on it, and that was pretty good. Uh, I also remember Fandango and Jericho really well because that match was super short.
Oh, Fandango. It's a name I don't think about that much, and which makes me sad because I love Johnny Curtis, especially when he's now
Hmm.
doing his weird thing, or back to doing the weird thing, Dirty Curdy, I believe it is now. Um, but no, it was like I think 29 was kind of an underrated WrestleMania anyway. I think it just got blown out of the water because WrestleMania 30 was the next year, and you had the ending of the streak
Yeah,
and the Yes movement and whatnot. So
yeah, definitely.
So from there, what made you take the step to become a professional wrestler? What made you decide to cross the barricade, if you will?
So, like, uh, a while had passed, certainly, before I made that decision. I was in high school, and if you're familiar with Anakin Murphy, me and him are like for real best friends. We've known each other since high school. Um, uh, as opposed to work best friends, we are shoot best friends. I actually, I'm not gonna say who, but I did have somebody ask me if we're real best friends. And yes, I will clear that up. We are indeed real best friends. But we were both like really into wrestling. I remember like the way our friendship started was because I was talking to him about Backlash 2017. Like I remember just kind of bringing it up because I had found out that he was like interested in wrestling, and I was like, that's really cool. Someone else who's interested in something I'm interested in. We had spent a little bit of time like with other kids from the school doing like backyard stuff for a little bit, but like we really wanted to like go to the next level. We wanted to like take it seriously. So we started looking for a school, and Anakin had found the SICW Training Academy, which was at the time headed by Bob Orton, Sean Vincent, Ricky Cruz, and Chris Hargis. Um, and we stayed there for about 8 months. Sorry, I'm kind of like barreling into the rest of the expedition, but yeah, we were there for about 8 months before they essentially told us like, hey, we're gonna keep taking your money and we're gonna keep training you guys, but you're too small to wrestle. And just a little aside, I want to say like Ricky and Bob are the two like shining stars from that like academy. I remember like Ricky was straight up with us. He told us that they were gonna do this to us at some point, and Bob was just always like trying to like show us new stuff. Uh, I won't go super hard on the other two, but they kind of knew what they were doing. They were taking our money and they were telling us that we weren't going to be able to become professional wrestlers. So we did what any reasonable people would do, and we left and we went and found somewhere that would give us our first matches. Uh, that happened, but I do want to clarify I did end up going to train with Mad Dog Connolly in 2021 to kind of basically like round out the rest of my training. And from there on, I had gone to Chicago in like 2023, and I trained under Atomico and Skayde to learn some lucha libre. So like, I know I kind of just went through the entire expedition there without the other question, but that's basically like my credentials in terms of training.
No, at a certain level, actually, I find that I don't always spend a lot of time on that, but I find that to be kind of the most interesting. Like one of the more interesting things is like, is what made you say I'm going to train, and then two, like kind of what made you what made you decide on the specific school you're going to, because especially I mean at the time you kind of come up in your training and whatnot. I mean, there are so many like actually decent schools out there, and like
Yeah,
and I've like I've talked to folks that have basically completely uprooted their entire life and traveled halfway across the country, and of course we all have the various stories of people traveling across the world or whatnot. So I think it's fascinating to hear people say like, oh, like I left California to go train in Davenport, Iowa, just because everyone loves Seth Rollins, or some variation of like, or going to Texas to train with Booker T, or you know anything like
yeah,
that. So like I find like that process like fascinating. Like in addition to like, oh yeah, they have a good school, but like there's good schools everywhere. Like what would make you train like such and such, and then obviously the other side of the coin, there's terrible schools like everywhere too.
hmm
Um, Sam Holloway had him on, and he talked like he said he went to just kind of like went to do like a camp before signing up with the school, and they're like, we'll have you in the we'll have you work in a match this weekend if you want. And
Oh
even
man, that's
and
awesome.
he even and then on the flip side, but he's like, that sounds like a terrible, like, that's cool, but that sounds like a terrible idea. Like, and he's like, I didn't follow through with it. I'm like, yeah, well, like, would you been in the ring, or would that was just like a bait and switch where they would have you show up and be security or whatnot? But given the fact
Be a
that like
referee.
but given the fact he's like 6'10", like I'd totally see them just like making him like some silent giant for a match or something like that, and
Yeah.
like have him do stuff that he's probably not properly trained to do it within 1 week of going to that school. Um, but you're the first person I've talked to that had uh, well, I'll throw out both names and we'll kind of hit them one at a time. But like Cowboy Bob Orton, like I've not talked to any of his or anyone that's acknowledged themselves as one of his trainees. Said like he was overall really cool, but like what was it like sitting under his learning tree, because he's been everywhere and worked with almost anyone that we consider a legend from like 75 on.
Yeah, so obviously, like I'll preface this, I was 16 years old when I started training. Um, so like I always kind of kick myself in the like foot basically because I'm like if I knew as much about wrestling as I do now, I would have been sitting there over there asking him so many more questions. But he was there very often and like there's a lot of times where like schools will like say they're headed by somebody and that person isn't really there that often. Bob would be there like they would run Tuesdays and Thursdays. Bob would at least make sure to be there every Tuesday if he couldn't be there every Thursday. Um, he like he was just a really kind guy. He was very down to earth. Um, I really do wish they let him like talk to us a little bit more, like about his experiences around the world. Yeah, you like if you asked him about it, he would talk about it. You know,
Right.
uh, one of my favorite stories is that like he obviously like physically he did not show us how to do it, but he basically taught that whole class how to do a monkey flip.
That's great. I hear things like that, and I think of like Shawn Michaels when he had his school, and that like his mom ran the books, like did the
Hmm.
business side of it, and like she'd come down and have to like yell at him because he would do things like that with his back being all jacked up at the time. I just think of 60-plus-year-old Bob Orton like like doing a monkey flip, either both like, I mean, it's even to do the move, like you got to get up and roll, let alone like teaching how to take the bump off of it too. Like that.
Yeah. Like he was always wanting to like he was seeing the stuff that they were teaching us and he was always trying to push us to do more, which is something that I think is like really admirable because like on the same like token of showing us like the mechanics of a monkey flip, he'd be like, "All right, now like let's try to do something like hurricanranas." I remember that too.
I
And
just thought of him doing a Hurricane Rana. Like, I mean, even in his youth, he was deceptively big. Like, just a tall, lanky
mhm.
guy. Like, not a guy you'd think of breaking out Hurricane Ranas or wanting someone else to break out a Hurricane Rana. But
No, you're totally good.
sorry. That's awesome to hear. He's super cool about like that and pushing you
Yeah.
guys. I'm just but on the flip side, I'm just gonna say, he's just like, you guys, too small to be wrestlers, and like the wrestling world has changed so much, and like,
This was back in like 2018, 2019 too. So like yeah, no, I even think then a comment like that is extremely ignorant because it's like at like at the promotion that this school was under anyways is like super old school. It's one of those places where like you can't wrestle anywhere that's 40 miles within the like same area as the place. And if you throw someone over the top rope, you're getting DQ'd.
ah, I mean, I love that rule, but that's more of like, I love that rule ironically. And I will say that whenever I like, I'll say things like that whenever I like break out like the NWA periodically, like even current NWA. I'm like, are you allowed to use a closed fist? Are you allowed to throw people over the top rope? But that's just me being an old and a big nerd about that stuff. So covered Bob Orton. What was it like training under Skayde?
That was a very like big change of pace. At that point, I had like at that point, like obviously I've gotten a lot more experience as a wrestler. I've been wrestling in front of like crowds for a pretty decent amount of time at that point. Um, uh, it like the big thing that was interesting about it was how like people always tell you wrestling is a language that can be understood like without speaking any words, you know? And I feel like it really shows in stuff like Lucha Libre because we end up being put in there with people who couldn't speak any English, but all we had to do was know what the spot was and it was fine. Uh, that's just something that's always like amazed me about it. Uh, Training with them was very, very like insightful. I enjoyed being able to like be a part of like the lucha libre culture, and I enjoyed learning all of the very cool transitional stuff that he showed us. He showed us so many like really cool pins and ways to get from A to B that I would have never thought of if I was just like sitting down trying to think of different ways to get out of things.
And like that's something that people don't think about with lucha libre is that yes, they do a lot of the aerial maneuvers, but like they've gotten their own take on, we'll call it the catch style of wrestling with move transitions and going from hold to hold. That it's crazy. And then to help push Skayde, like he like veritable legend and so good with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a big Chikara household, and like, yes, we acknowledge that Chikara did not end well, blah blah blah. But like, obviously, Skayde had like a huge hand in like the early years being a trainer at the Wrestle Factory and having an influence
Hmm.
on the product there as well as, and then he, of course, he wrestled there too, and so it was just amazing to
Yeah.
watch that man go even at his age, just tying himself and the people he's with in veritable knots with the counters and the pins.
Yeah, and like he still wrestles often now. And it was really cool being able to see him wrestle during my time training with Atomico and Skayde.
So, any thoughts? Any, and this is the stupid question. Any thoughts of doing a variation of a lucha gimmick for that time period?
So, like, uh, I played around with it a lot. Skayde had pulled me and my mentor, the guy who I was going with at the time, Roy Lewis, aside, and he had brought a translator with him to like basically talk to us and uh it's like one of the coolest things that's ever been said to me, but Skyday basically told me and Roy that he really liked the way that we wrestled because of the way that we combined the two different styles, and he actually like gave me the contact for his mask maker. So like
Oh,
it's something
nice.
I've kind of played around with the idea of like maybe not necessarily a gimmick, but I've also thought about like maybe doing something where I either have a mask as a part of my entrance attire where I'll like wear it to the ring and then I'll take it off, or just have it like hanging from like one of my flower shirts or the vest that I come out wearing sometimes. It's definitely something I've thought about a lot.
Oh, that would work. I mean, there are. I mean, oh, actually, a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. A lot is a general term, but there are luchadores so that after they lose the mask, they still keep the mask on for the entrance, and then that's part of their thing that they pop it off. Or, I
Yeah.
mean, most famously, at least famously in the U.S., I mean, Andrade El Idolo has done that as part of his entrance, and like, let's face it, looks fantastic. Usually when he's rocking like the black mask attire and whatnot. And
Hmm.
then and then you got all the other like gimmick folk. Or I'll do just a brief shout out to the Wizard CZ Mantar, just because that's CZ's favorite wrestler ever.
Yeah.
That different
Mantar
mask right
rock.
there. Totally different wrestler. Different, I should say different, totally different mask off that one. Because there's no way he was ever going to wrestle in that thing. But ah, though I would have paid. I'd paid good money to see him with a full do just like one full match, even if it's like 3 minutes with that bull head on. That's because I'm a terrible person. Enough Mantar. Never enough Mantar in reality, but for this interview, maybe. Uh,
For now.
yeah, for now, we'll see where he pops up again. We'll maybe turn to a drinking game. We'll slip Mantar references in, and everyone gets to take a drink when Mantar pops up. Um, but you've in addition to the training, have worked quite a bit um, with and against Anakin, amongst others, in 01 USA. Um,
Mhm.
how did that come about? Because I always like fascinated about like Japanese companies kind of like making inroads in America, and then just kind of that promotion kind of ends up doing kind of their own thing separate from the Japanese contingent. So how did you come about 01?
So 01 USA runs very locally in Illinois, actually. That's how we caught wind of it. At the time, I believe it was still running out of the Burgess Osborne Auditorium in Mattoon. Uh, and they had that venue for a while up until I think recently. But that was one of those companies like Joe, yeah, sorry, Anakin had introduced me to uh a local independent not too long after we had started like getting to know each other, and that's kind of like when I became more aware of like the bigger picture. I kind of left that part out, but like going to that first like local place that I went to, uh I cannot name them for specific reasons. I will get into a lot of trouble because I have allegedly ruined this company. But I can't say their name, but this company basically like opened up the world for me where it's like now I know like now I knew that there was like the independents were a real thing. I know it's kind of stupid in retrospect, but like yeah, like this kind of opened that up for me. That's kind of like that basically got us to the point where we were like, okay, before we start training, we kind of want to start helping out at certain shows so that we can kind of be like acquainted with these people once we start training. And 01 was one of the places that me, Anakin, and Rob Leach would drive to regularly to help and like set up and tear down the ring. Not because like we were training at the time, but because we wanted to like get in with them. We did that at a few places, but 01 was the place that really like remembered who we were, and I think like I don't know, that was just like really cool to us. And so like uh more so me than Anakin, but we've stuck with 01 basically like the entire tenure of our careers.
But yeah, for everyone's education, yeah, Z01 predominantly runs kind of like the southern Illinois. Like they pop up in Indiana periodically,
Hmm.
but like they actually popped up to north central Illinois in my hometown. It's been I'm terrible with dates, but it's probably been close to like 10 years now, maybe 13. I think it probably been about 2017 ish, maybe. I gotta think of like how young my nephew is because that was like some of the only wrestling he's gotten to attend live because he lives out in the middle of nowhere. Um, but yeah, they ran a couple. They ran a couple shows up in my neck of the woods, which is awfully north for 01. So finally got to see them, and I mean, I've been aware of their existence for whatever, but I thought I'd touch that because you've had you've had, I mean, at least okay, I'll throw under my bus of my some of my research via Cage Match, like arguably some of your biggest success there, as well. Not your only
I've
success,
been
because
waiting I'm waiting to get that cage match page for years. So whoever like finally like let them be aware of the Luminary, thank you. I've been eyeballing that, waiting for the Luminary to turn blue for years.
I got disappointed because like I like did the actual like sign up for it, thinking I could like submit reviews or at least submit the cards for like some of the smaller promotions that I've gone to, and it turns out just having an account doesn't mean you get to actually submit anything for it to appear. You still have to send it off, in which you don't need a real account to send that off to their mods. So I was so disappointed about that because there's like guys I've seen for like years and haven't turned blue yet. And I'm like, I don't know if you've been wrestling for 5 years, like even if you're I don't know. I'm not pulling off, 100 matches a year or something like that. Like, you deserve a little, a little bit of love, or at least something like so people can like check up on you or something of the like. But I'm a like quasi bad host, and like that's a chunk. That's also part of my research is going to cage match and seeing what's there. Obviously, though, I will throw out that it's not. It's like Wikipedia. It's not always like the be all end all. Like things either slip through the cracks or aren't updated enough, or varying things like that. But like it's a handy tool that I do rely on like way too much. Sometimes just for my own entertainment to find out what I'm going to watch next week.
I mean, honestly, it's a fun site to just kind of like pick a year, maybe a date, and then just kind of see what happened, you know?
Oh, like right now over on Blue Sky, one of the things that's going around is cage match your first wrestling show. And so people are like screenshotting like the first wrestling event that they attended live. And like I was like thought like, can I do that? And then I'm like, well, you went to like I think my first was a SmackDown, so I could totally like it would totally be there instead of like some random like IWA Midwest show, or God forbid next level elite wrestling. Shout out to anyone of that may have been part of that promotion that listens to this podcast, because they're running out of the thoroughly banging Orion, Illinois. All 100 people that
Ooh,
are out there.
hey, a
Well,
100 people is 100 people, you know?
I mean, but there's only like 25 showing up to the shows, so only like a quarter of the town was showing up to the show. Uh, but I was out in the middle of nowhere, and one of my like low key like favorite places to go, just because of the concept behind it. But enough about that, though. Never mind that. So I kind of tailoring it to your, in addition to Zero One, but working with Anakin. So did you guys like be one of those guys that kind of like come in together like thinking you'd always be a tag team, or was it just one of those things where like it was just like let's both do this thing, and then just like wherever it goes it happens to go?
So like, we toured around with the idea of being a tag team for a pretty long time, but I don't think it was really ever like in the books to be that way. Like, I just think like we both probably like felt, at least I felt like I kind of wanted to do my own thing for a little bit and kind of find my own footing. And like I think like it's safe to say, especially now, we've both gotten pretty solid footing in like who we are and what we want to do. And so like it makes the idea of teaming a lot less like overwhelming and a lot less like inconceivable. I'm sorry, my cat over here is throwing up, I think.
Oh no. Oh.
You all right, buddy? All right, he's okay. He didn't do anything.
There we go.
All right, I'm
It was,
sorry. Let
oh,
me start again with that one. Like we wanted to kind of like do our own thing for a little bit. And I think like now that we have our footing and we kind of know who we are and we know what we're doing, it kind of makes the option of teaming up a lot more appealable. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with TWE in
a
Chattanooga,
little bit.
but we had a pretty like decent stint over there. We picked up the TWE tag team titles, and like it was just kind of built off of the fact that like we're just two best friends who are professional wrestlers who really like to have fun.
No, that works. And I was going to at least briefly bring up TWE because I've caught like a show here or there, but again, cage
Hmm.
matching things and whatnot, and just like popping up like oh, you guys have the belts there for a wee bit, so like that's always awesome, and the fact that you could be able to hold the belt with your best friend is always amazing.
Super
Um,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, But
It's
like, yeah, they
definitely something we'd like to do more of.
but it's just like one of those things, like, as I've, like, kind of, like, become, like, aware of, like, well, as you put it, like, as you guys found your footing and, like, kind of, like, as I've become aware of you guys, like, I do like the kind of, like, the dichotomy between, like, the visages of the Luminary with Anakin Murphy together, because like, they're
Mhm.
almost, like, diametrically opposed. Like Luminary is pretty colorful, at least we'll say, at least initially, with the flowers and whatnot. And you have Anakin, who's just a little, like, little, you know, death metal, little emo looking dude, and
Yeah.
like, but hey, peanut butter and jelly, like, and you know, as long as the chemistry's there, it's all good. But like, I thought, but it was like cool to see, like, oh, like, the guys traveled over, like, to Tennessee and got to hold the belts for a bit, because they have like a salt, like, they're I don't want to say underappreciated, because there's so many indies that are underappreciated, but like, they bring in some pretty darn good folk overall. Like,
I would
because
definitely say like TWE is one of the more like solid independent professional like wrestling places I've been at. Um it's just always a fun time over there. Like everyone's always like really laid back and it's always just really professional, you know. It's a very tight ship that they run over there.
right, but yeah, and as I said, like, they bring in some, like, decent names too, because I know
Mm.
Shug D pops in over there quite a bit with his group, the Good Hand, and obviously, um, like, they have partnerships with some of the other wrestling promotions in the area too, to also bring in, like, some bigger names, because I know through a joint effort, like, they brought in Richard Holiday. I know Manders, as much as he's a thorn in my side, like, he's popped in over there too, uh, which, if I read right, like, you guys had a run in down there. Am I
Yeah, we did.
correct?
Uh,
Uh,
we were in, so it was like a lethal lottery kind of thing, where the gimmick was like, we wouldn't know, like, we knew the stipulation of the match, but we didn't know like anything else past that. And so, yeah, no, it was a really interesting experience. Uh, Manders goes out, and I hear my music. And I'm like, all right, this is a knockout or tap out match, and I am against Manders. Let's see how this is gonna go. Uh,
I mean, no
it
offense
was
intended,
definitely an
but
experience.
no
I
offense
can tell you
intended, but he's
from.
a.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, no, no disrespect intended, but he's kind of a big meaty dude, and you are not a big meaty dude in
Yeah, yeah,
a
no,
knockout match.
by any means, by
Like,
any means.
know it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but if it's a knockout
I
situation,
can
you're the
tell you
guy who
from
strikes.
firsthand. Yeah, Manders pretty tough. Manders hits really hard, but I'd like to think that I gave it back to him pretty good. Something that I very much pride myself on is that my look is very deceiving. Uh, because like once a crowd is familiar with me and they know, they know. I've always kind of thought of this quote from Excalibur where he's talking about how like if you don't get a lot of offense in, you have to make sure that the offense you do get in counts, right? You have to make it count. And so I'm always thinking like if I'm in there and I'm like on the receiving end, you know, how can I make this next thing count, right? So I might be 150 pounds, not exactly the tallest person in the world, but anytime I'm swinging at you, you better believe I'm swinging for the fences.
Well, I mean, depending on the type of strike. I mean, I'd almost, not gonna lie, as a relatively big dude myself, like, sometimes it's the little folks that are the ones that, like, bring me the most problems. Not gonna lie, just because y- like, their hands are sharp. Like, it sounds weird, but their hands are sharp, sharp,
The
and they got
bony hands, you know?
bony knees, and like, I'll throw out their center of gravity, like, depending on it. I have been flipped. Not that I've gotten into like many real fights, but I've worked residential, and so I've been flipped so many times, just literally just because the center of gravity is so different. Like I've been flipped by people who had
Yeah.
no intentions of flipping me. Like they just wanted to get to point A and point B, and I just happened to be that in the way and got like a variation of a football chop or a chop block variation, just because they hit me, in like the thigh, and I had no choice but to just roll over. but
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
but but yeah, so like that is overall like really cool. That like, and I guess to throw it out there too, because I'm a big fan of. Actually, I'm a bigger fan of Raw Roulette, but I also enjoy, say, like the Battle Bowl Lethal Lotteries of like WCW. So like what, how do you prepare for that? Both, like, I mean, I don't want to say like in kicker, but just like even just as a worker, like how do you prepare for not necessarily knowing kind of like what you're getting into going into the show like that?
So something that kind of benefits me in this sense is like the experience factor. If I was like, let's say, like, if I was like only maybe like, and I'm not saying that I've been wrestling for a super long time because 6 years isn't that long at all. But like, if I was saying like I was maybe like in like year two or year three, I would have been way more anxious and like way more in my head about this than like I was at that point, where it's been like I've been wrestling for about like 5 years at that point, and like it's not my first lethal lottery, surprisingly enough. um, so like that kind of helps a lot, but like really I think a lot of it is just about like I think the best part about it is that you just don't know what's gonna happen. You could go out there and like you could gel really well with the person and you could have a really, really good and memorable match. You could go out there and maybe it's just not there, and you could have something that isn't as great, but it's just the spectacle of it, I think, is what gets people so attracted to the idea of a lethal lottery. Because I do think it's one of the more like, from a fan perspective, it's a lot more interesting that way. Like, I would be more inclined to click on a show that's a lethal lottery than a show that has a completely thought out card, just because like, oh, what if this happens?
Like low key, like one of my favorite shows back in the day was always Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's Mystery Vortex, which
Hmm.
was basically they would announce who's going to show up, but they wouldn't announce the card at all like beforehand. Like but you knew, like, say, like the Young Bucks were going to be there, or Candice LeRae and Johnny Gargano, or insert anybody from Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Like, you knew who was going to show up. They would tell you
Yeah.
that, but you didn't know if it was going to be Chris Hero and Johnny Gargano, or Roderick Strong versus Chris Hero, or something of the like. So but I love that. The only thing I hate is like finding out about these events and then like being like faux spoilers when you like click next to maybe get to watch it. Looking at you, IWTV. This is supposed to be a secret, and here I am getting I have to see the card before I'm allowed to hit play. Come on, guys, what's up with that?
Gotta have like a spoiler warning,
Yeah,
something
blurt
that would
out.
like block it.
I mean, I guess like since I do watch a bunch of these on TV, I'm not sure how well like that would work from, like, we'll say, app to app, because like first world problems over here. I usually watch my IWTV on the big TV, so like sometimes that technology doesn't work with, say, like the laptop with computer or the phone app. But first world problems. Life is so terrible, I guess. We've covered your team with Anakin, but now you're rocking a couple of different units, most notably the Light, and then by proxy, um, I haven't heard it pronounced yet, but is it gay or just GAY
It's
with Glenn?
GAY.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
I
a play on DIY,
okay.
obviously. One of our favorite teams.
Okay, I
Uh,
just didn't want to out there like shouting gay when it is actually AY.
No, you're
I've
fine.
already buggered things up. I already buggered things up to start the interview. I mean, it's but so kind of. I guess just briefly. I mean, because I know GAY's also kind of part of the larger light group. But I guess so. We'll just kind of like start with the light, and then I'll kind of like segue out into GAY. So how did the light come about?
So if I remember correctly, um, so a little bit of a history lesson because like one thing I didn't mention beforehand is like the last time I did do a podcast, I did most of it like in character. This is the first time I've done a podcast in a very long time where I'm just kind of like talking about stuff. But like the light has been a thing since like I basically started the Luminary back in like 2021. Uh so like a little like history lesson to kind of like give context for the stuff I'm about to explain is like I wrestled at a place called IWAU in Noble, Illinois. It's a town of 700 people that runs in a like renovated church that was turned into a wrestling venue. Uh, on a good day, you're getting like maybe 35 people in the building. On a bad day, you're getting maybe seven. So like it would run every Tuesday. Uh, but that's kind of where I initially started the light. I took two of their trainees, and they were kind of just like my lackeys for a little bit, with the underlying goal of putting them over by having them both like gain their independence from me and beating me because most of the time I feel like that's the proper story ending where it's like you're the bad guy, so you always put the good guy over in the end. I feel like that's just the best way to do business. Um, but yeah, like for a long time I kind of just used the light as like a tool to help elevate other people like that. Um, but when I like kind of did like the soft reboot for my character where I like did the blonde hair look for the first time, and I kind of was like, I want to lock down more of the like cult leader aspects of the character. I want to be like, I want to have a more like genuine feeling to this character. And so if I'm a cult leader, of course I need a cult, right? And so a lot of people like it started out as just a 0-1 thing, and like that is a common like I guess I would call it a misconception because I don't think the light is just a 0-1 thing anymore. um the current incarnation of the light as it stands is myself, Gwen Neodonna, Hippie Johnny, and Jackie Thad. uh, but it originally started with me and Hippie Johnny. The way it went was like the Luminary was seeing Hippie Johnny was having a really hard time on the pre-show at 0-1. He just couldn't quite get the job done. Well, the Luminary decided to show Hippie Johnny the light, show him exactly what he's missing, you know? Once he joins the light, good things will start coming to him. Uh, little did he know at the time that this meant I would help him cheat to win matches. But that doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. He's seen the light. His life is better because of it. And so, there he is. Gwen is obviously my fiance, so there wasn't really a lot of argument in terms of her joining the light. The actual way that turned out working out, though, was in between the time of me and Hippie being heel, we had been turned face, and Gwen had basically helped us beat Annihilation at 0-1 to win the tag title for a second time. And that was her introduction to the light. And in terms of Jackie, he hasn't properly been like introduced to a crowd yet, storyline wise, but we've already kind of like announced him as a member of the Light. Uh, I would like the Light as a group to expand further than just 0-1 because I think Hippie is very underrated. I think a lot of people kind of like sleep on Hippie. He makes a lot of moves locally in Illinois, but I think once he starts getting out there and he really gets to shine in front of more audiences, people are gonna love him just as much as they love everybody else that's in the light. Uh, I don't really have much to speak on for Jackie that Jackie can't like back up himself. He's an extremely hard worker. He's constantly other places, and like it really is like a fun game to play where like you'll be scrolling down the timeline and you'll just be like, oh, there's Jackie Thad in I don't know, uh, Nashville or something. You know what I mean? He's always all over the place. Uh, but like a lot of my focus has been with. I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of just jumping from A to B here, just kind of rambling. I'm sorry, but like a lot of my main focus has been with like Gay, me and Gwen, uh, and like I think like when once like I because I've been wrestling as long as I have, I do like struggle a lot with the idea of burnout and stuff like that. But I think like being able to tag with these people, more specifically with Gwen, it makes wrestling a lot more fun for me. Not necessarily saying I don't like it when I'm doing single stuff, because that's not true. I do. It's just like I feel like I'm able to kind of be a more genuine version of me when I'm with these people because we're all just kind of out there having fun. We all kind of like we know each other really well, and we're all trying to help each other, but like most importantly, we're just kind of out there having fun, you know?
That's applicable to almost any field of work. The less that you have to, I will call it bear yourself, like not that it like, but just stress in general, whether good stress, bad stress. The less you have to bear yourself, the less likely the bad parts get to take over for a bit. And whether
Yeah.
that's wrestling, especially in like wrestling where it's such a it's such a creative sport and there's so many different ways to go about it, having others around you to physically and emotionally take some of the load off on a week to week basis is never a bad thing. um to use a dated analogy, but like if if wrestling's a painting, you, you want as much color to use as you can,
Mhm.
and color is all the people, all the workers that you have available to you, whether it's in the match or the entirety of the show or whatnot. So to make a beautiful picture, you got to have all the colors at your disposal.
Yeah.
But with the focus on GAY, I really want to put over uh the full queer tag team championship, the Harvey Milk and Sylvester tag team championship, which you guys had a shot at, was it December if I'm correct? um
Yes, I believe it was December. When we get into specific dates like that, you're gonna lose me. It kind of all blends together. I made the terrible mistake of not like documenting my matches when I first started. So like once we get into like last year, it gets a little rough.
it's all good. That's why one that's why I try to like stick to the month, because like Lord knows that oh, days kind of mean nothing, and the fact that in this digital era where I can watch things whenever from whenever, like I may not I don't know when the event was, I may not have even looked at it. Like I'm not gonna lie, like that match had actually become available on YouTube like just today as like a premiere, so I did get to watch it.
Oh,
But like the date on it, like I didn't pay attention to the date on it, but like if you look at the YouTube date, it's today, and if you look at it tomorrow, it'll be one day ago. But it happened in the past. But I don't know. Also, you can use the the convenient excuse, if nothing else, is that you're getting hit in the head for a living. So
oh, I
things
do
are.
get dropped on my head often.
But I also cheap plug in there. But like had Marion Fontaine on last month, and he really stressed the concept for anybody who's looking to get into the business. Keep a journal of names,
Hmm.
places, matches, because at some point or another, even if you're not, gonna get stuck on some random neckbeards podcast, like you might want to stop and think of like, holy crap, I might have actually been on a show with Homicide. Marion forgot that he did like a random show with Homicide back in like 2005, and you'd think
Hmm.
like, well, he was a big deal back then. Like you think you'd remember that? Well, no, not if you've been dropped in your head for a number of years, or have worked hundreds of shows plus done whatever else things going on there. But before we got but before we go totally off the rails, I do want to hear you talk about about full queer and being able to work well, specifically challenge for those specific titles, and then if you want, you can put over creeps or bury them, whichever you would prefer as well.
Well, yeah, obviously, the creeps, massive cheaters. We want our shot at the belts again. Uh, that wasn't fair. I'm playing. Uh, I love the creep. That match was a lot of fun. Being able to compete for the full queer tag titles was really cool. Uh, it's something that I will never think wrestling will have enough of, and that's like queer representation. You know, uh, it's really cool to have belts like that and to be able to challenge for belts like that because like if you were to go back like I'd say like 15 years ago, a belt like that probably wouldn't be able to exist in such a public fashion. Maybe not 15 years, maybe more like 2025. But again, circling back to what we were just talking about, I get dropped on my head pretty often.
No, I think, I mean, regardless of what people identify as, and whether that's hobby things or life things, like representation is important, because I will put over
Mm,
once again, name dropping previous guests. Irving West did come on the show and talk, like, even before we talked about being LGBTQ plus. He put over just the fact that watching certain wrestlers, just knowing that like they were punk rockers and they were vegan was just super awesome to note. And then also being, and then like as he went by and explored the other facets in his life, in terms of, well, even in terms of sexuality, seeing like some of the wrestlers say like your effies and whatnot come out there and just be like, hey, this is who I am,
yeah.
deal with it. um and so like as we kind of put over kind of indirectly at the start of the episode, but you were out open non-binary, they them pronouns. How important is that for you to kind of put that out there? Like, and I'm not saying like you're doing it to set the example, but like but just being just having the freedom or willingness to put that out there as part of your public persona.
Yeah, I think it's very important to me. It's very important to me because uh I won't say it, but a lot of people will tell me like you're like really good at this. You know what I mean? So it's really important to me that people know that I am non-binary and I'm not just a good wrestler, I'm a good non-binary wrestler. You know what I mean? Like I think it's important that those pronouns, I think it's important that they're there. Uh, because I think oftentimes people in the community will get like looked at as just that, like part of the community. But when I go out there and I hit the curtain, uh, whether you agree with it or not, you are not able to sit there and deny the fact that I am a good professional wrestler. Someone, my mentor, Roy, always used to tell me that if you're gonna be anything, you should be undeniable. And I didn't really get that for a really long time. But I feel like now something like that is more important than ever, right? Like, at least in my opinion.
No, I full-heartedly agree. And obviously, like, I consider this place to be a safe space. Obviously, we wouldn't have this conversation if I didn't consider it in some way, shape, or form, a safe space to talk about this. But I think, especially in the current political climate, and like, being out there and existing how you are is more important than ever, because like I am part of the community that thinks, variation, we'll call this variations of a theme, like there LGBTQ plus has always existed in one way, shape, or form. The only
Hmm.
difference is how allowed were they to, those individuals allowed to express it publicly. um and I think it's very important to be able to do that. And like, however you choose to express it yourself, I mean, that's fine, because I've definitely had gay, straight, you know everyone on this podcast. But I really like having the folks that are like, yes, I'm gay, I'm a gay person who happens to be a wrestler, rather than so much as like, I'm a wrestler who happens to be gay. Like, because
Yeah,
as I said, like right now, like representation is almost more important. At least we'll say, at least, well, yeah, it's getting weird in the rest of the world too. Like, almost, it's more important than it's probably been in quite some time to have, and to be able to say these things. And I didn't have a speech prepared, so I have no clue where I'm going with this rant. But like,
yeah, no, I get it. I just talk,
end of the day, end of the day, what I'm saying is representation matters. And
Yeah,
if not to put the burden specifically on you, or anyone who's running around with, whether it's Irvin West or Gwen, or or we'll look at the bigger picture of like, anybody who appeared on Effie's Big Gay Brunch. It's not like necessarily on their shoulders, but like, I find it's commendable for people just to be like, say, and here's our swear word for the day, but just to say fuck it, like, this is who we are.
yeah, and like something that I will share because it's something that I feel like really shows how important that representation is that like there are plenty of times that I've had people from all different walks of life come up to me privately at shows, like when I'm walking around the venue during intermission or what have you, and talk to me about like how important it is that I'm doing what I'm doing. I've had somebody like tell me like, "Hey, thanks for like being you. Like thanks for being brave enough to do something that my generation wasn't brave enough to do." And things like that, it's like it's really humbling because it's like you're telling me this, like I don't know, it's something that like I've always thought of like if I don't really go anywhere past like just doing local independence, if I don't really go like not even just local, like if I don't go any further than the independents, if it's just like that for the rest of my career, I'd be okay with that because I know that there are people who feel my presence and feel like I'm making a difference. And that's really all I want to do.
And just to say this, just to kind of reel it back and to put it into just general wrestling terms, I mean, really, that's the most important part of being a wrestler, is just to
Yeah.
be able to make, maybe just be able to make a difference just to that one fan per show, regardless of whatever we'll say the message may be, whether it's just that guy took the time out to you know make me feel cool, or show me that it's okay to do X, Y, or Z, even if it's be myself, follow my dreams, or like, let's face it, just have one night where we're not worried about what's going on outside the world right now.
Yeah.
But all right, we've been going for close to an hour. And before I say anything that gets my house burned down or anything of the like, uh, where can we find you on the interwebs, and where can we find you out in the coming weeks, so we could possibly go out and find you in the live setting?
I am most active on my Twitter, which is at PSI underscore Luminary. Uh, that's the big one. You can also find me on Facebook under Jacques Kennedy. Eventually, I'll have that updated at some point. I don't really use Facebook that often. Um, in terms of where you can find me in the following week, I'm at 01 USA Thursday Night Throwdown every Thursday in Edgewood, Illinois. And then I'll be in Alton, Illinois for St. Louis Anarchy this Friday. I believe it's the 25th when I'll be in a fatal four-way against Gwen Neodana, Ashlyn Alexander, and Noah Clover. Uh, I'm really looking forward to that one. That'll be a lot of fun. Uh, those are the two like big ones that are happening this week. Uh, yeah, I
Good enough.
appreciate being on.
Oh no, it's great having you on. You came recommended, so like I'll put over that. So it's just I send batches of emails at a time. Sometimes it's as soon as the recommendation occurs. Sometimes it's months later, but it's always great, you know, having someone being able to pop on, speak about themselves and talk about their journey
Yeah,
through the world of pro wrestling.
yeah, it was a
Um,
lot of fun. I always enjoy like being able to open up the dialogue a bit more because I'm a pretty like mysterious person. I like to think. I usually just keep to myself for the most part. So it's always nice being able to kind of open up more.
The Confusion Wrestling Podcast is a weekly podcast that is written and performed by Rob Kammer and hosted by Spotify for podcasters. The background music for this section is Ruined by Day, performed by Alan Schroeder. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to help support, please like, subscribe, and tell your friends, family, and enemies. Leaving a review is helpful as well, because word-of-mouth advertisement is very important for us small podcasts. My social media links can be found in the description, but Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky are at The Nova of Cass. That's TheNovaofCass, and Facebook is MLW Confusion, all one word. If you'd like to support monetarily and help upgrade my equipment, please check out my virtual tip jar at ko-fi.com/Casanova, or if you prefer more bang for your buck, go to patreon.com/Casanova, that's CASSONOVA, where for as little as $2, backers get access to the podcast early and without those pesky ads, plus other exclusive content. So join the crew that is headed up by Keith Wynn, Alan Schroeder, Chris Zach, and Elenia, and check it out. You can also find t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other merch at the Confusion Podcast store on Teespring. Also, be sure to check out the affiliate links in the description below. For business inquiries such as ads, sponsorships, and etc., please email rzkamer, Kamerer, at comcast.net. Thank you all for listening.